Morning. I'd like to call to order the February meeting of the Suffolk Historic Landmarks Commission. I'd like to welcome everybody here. It's nice to see everybody here on a brisk winter morning. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bailey,
Here.
Commissioner Bissell, Commissioner Coley,
Here.
Commissioner Emerson, Commissioner Hobbs,
Here.
Commissioner King, Commissioner McCormley,
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Here.
Commissioner Turner.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. The minutes have been distributed, and I trust everybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes. And I'd like to ask if there are any additions or corrections to the minutes. If there are none, we'll stand approved as read. Have no applications to review today, but we do have other business that review of the Historic Landmarks Commission bylaws, and I'd like to have the attorney, I think, is going to speak to us on the I guess it's somebody who's going to speak to the bylaws.
I believe I can speak to that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. At your last meeting, was that in October? It feels like forever ago. We distributed the bylaws and talked about it a little bit about, it's always good practice to update, your bylaws every, 5 years or so. I think it's been since 2016 maybe. And to see if there are any changes that need to be made and, if not, just recertify them. But one thing that kind of stuck out at me that I thought maybe the commission might want to look at is that there is a provision in there that indicates that if an application gets denied, they can't come back for a year, which my thought was that perhaps the commission, that wasn't really indicative of how the commission would want to operate. If somebody gets denied, they may be able to alter their application and come back, because we want people to invest in their properties. So I thought maybe, that the commission might want to have some discussion, or if you've looked at the bylaws and if there are any other provisions in there that you think might warrant some discussion and alteration, and then, we'll come back at the subsequent meeting and adopt any changes that may be warranted.
Do you know what article that is, the one that you were just talking about?
Looks like it's section 4.
Okay.
Article 4.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Article 6. Nope, Article 7. Not enough coffee this
Yep.
morning. Article 7, section 4.
Yeah, on page 5 there. Thank you.
Discussion with that.
That's a great observation that you've made, and good morning. That was one thing that I had noted as well, because I thought that was a very strong stance as it pertains to only being able to have one COA per year. But this is something that you have mentioned in previous discussions, and that is, let's say, for instance, if it's declined by us or denied, and then it's overturned with the city council, how applicable is that? Because that's a loophole that's right there in that language as well.
I mean, if city council overturns the decision, then obviously they've got an affirmative decision to go forward with whatever city council approves. But if they choose not to appeal and want to just, modify their application in accordance with whatever discussion might happen at, with the commission, it seems like, the provision for them to go ahead and reapply, just changing, again, whatever some people don't want to go through the whole process of appealing to council and are amenable to altering their application and be able to come back, boom, the next month. So I don't think would interfere with any, it would not interfere with their ability to still appeal. But if they choose not to do that, or if they appeal and get, up their decision gets upheld by council again, I think, would still be able to come back to this board should that provision get changed. Typically you have a provision like that for rezonings or, conditional use permits, because you don't want people just banging on your door every minute saying, well, what do you think now? It's like your kid, right? What about now? What about now? But in this case, if they can modify the application, now if they came back with the exact same thing, obviously you're probably going to deny it again. But if they're able to modify the application in ways, that the commission, again, either, advises them or, has some discussion and would be amenable to, it seems like we would want people to not have to wait that whole year to come back and be able to, again, invest in their property, should the commission think that's appropriate.
So just look at alternatives, then one alternative would be that we reduce that 1 year to 30 days, 60 days, whatever, at some point, I guess, or the other alternative would be just to strike that statement altogether.
Yeah.
But so you're proposing that we consider just striking the whole sentence?
My recommendation would be just to strike it altogether. To allow them again to come, because again, if they're, I don't want to say dumb enough, but if they come back with the exact same, application, you're likely going to just be like, hey, what are you doing? But again, a lot of times people will be able to say, oh, okay, I can change that paint color or change that style of that railing or whatever. And, and again, you all may have suggested that to them, in your discussion with them, and they're able to come right back around, apply for that and not have to wait, what seems like an unreasonable amount of time.
So what's the procedure for altering that? Do we vote to suggest that, or who has the final decision as to what is done with it?
So I think that you all would have that discussion. Staff could make that change and then bring it before you at the next meeting for you all to actually adopt the modified bylaws.
So then a motion to make those changes would be in order here to start that ball rolling then. Is that right? Okay.
And if there's anything else, that's the only thing really that kind of really flagged out at me. Everything else seemed like it was fairly reasonable and in line with practices that you would follow.
Any discussion? Anybody like to make a motion to that effect?
I don't have a motion as much as a comment, if I may add, if I'm in order. And that would be to not have a limitation in regards to whether it be annually or monthly, to allow, as it's been stated, as much as needed to invest in the property to enhance the necessary changes. So in other words, there shouldn't be a limitation.
So basically, strike that whole statement then?
That is correct.
All right.
I concur with the
Would you like-
staff recommendation. as it
would you like to
pertains to
make that a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we not have a limitation as it pertains to the applications being submitted and thereby allowing it no limitation and concurring with staff recommendation.
Okay, have a motion.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. There is discussion. Okay? Could we have a vote?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. I
Okay.
think to be clear, since what Commissioner Bailey is suggesting is specifically, the staff's recommendation is to specifically strike that first sentence of Section 4, final action by commission, that the motion should clarify that the motion is to strike that sentence. Unless Ms. Pittenger, unless there's something else that needs to change. If that's the change, I think we need to be specific in the motion, is my thought.
Which I think essentially what you've just said is the same thing as striking the sentence.
That is correct.
Okay, so to
Well, we just
simplify
want
it,
to be sure it's in the motion,
Yeah,
because of the way it was expressed is that there's no time limit and consistent with staff. But what has been explicitly said here today is that that sentence be struck. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay, are you okay with that? I mean, that essentially,
Yes, sir.
that we strike the first sentence.
Right, and it's not my motion, but
So yeah, if you
Right.
would restate your motion.
My motion then, therefore, in consideration of what our attorney has stated, is to, one, strike the language that is written in that section 4, in the first sentence, and in addition to not there be a limitation as it pertains to COAs that could be submitted in a time frame.
Okay. We had a second. Is everybody good with that?
Second.
Okay. All right.
I have a concern because you're saying no time limit, but there's other time limits within that section. I would recommend, if we're going to make a motion, that we make a motion that the first sentence in Section 4 be stricken and leave it at that. because within section 4 later on, there's discussion about not being reconsidered by the commission within a year of withdrawal.
All right, and well, that first sentence is a pretty long sentence. This is really the first 4 lines, if I'm reading that right. And so that final action by commission would start off by saying, if the application has been advertised in compliance with state law, and so on. That would be the new reading of it if this motion passes. Am I reading that correct?
I concur with fellow commissioner because the last sentence also states that it is up to the majority of the vote of the members of the commission. So that, I mean, essentially by striking that and including what I stated in my initial motion, the last sentence would more or less encompass what fellow commissioner has stated.
So in other words, by striking the first sentence, the applicant is protected by our review of the process. So it's not necessary to to elaborate on the first sentence in order to provide protection for the property of the property owner. Does that make sense? Am I reading that right?
So, Mr. Chair, the going on in the paragraph has been discussed is there's a time limit if it's withdrawn, which is different than just an application, and that withdrawal can be, that prohibition on filing after withdrawal can be changed by a vote from the HLC. So if the matter needs more discussion and guidance, I think that certainly guidance could be given to staff about looking at all of these timeframes rather than trying to make a decision today on that, because I don't know that there is a real clear what started out as being very direct in my estimation, which is striking a sentence. If you add general language that says no time limits, that can be challenged, I believe, because there's no direction for staff on what to change. So if we strike the first sentence, as I read it, and so it's not, there can be another application. If it's withdrawn, then the HLC would have to vote on allowing another application, as I read it.
And if I may, I believe that second part, which is probably, okay to keep if the commission chooses, is because we incur some cost, right? If we're advertising and, once we've advertised, we lost that money, and if they just withdraw and then, want to turn around, then we have to incur new costs to advertise again. And I think that's where that is trying to slow some of that up, to just have you keep, if you're not advertising, then, no big deal. But because there's costs associated with advertising, that, it's kind of to stop that. But by leaving that in, plus the very last sentence, the commission does have the ability, should there be a case that they think warrants it, they could, waive that provision. So you kind of are able to kind of accomplish both things by taking that first sentence out, but leaving the remainder. Then, again, it does stop people from just having the city incur unnecessary costs by not being sure by withdrawing and coming back and withdrawing and coming back, but allowing the commission the ability to say, hey, no, this is a hardship, or whatever, reason that the commission deems appropriate, and to waive that provision. It leaves you that latitude. If the motion ends up being just strike the first sentence of that section and leave we leave the rest of the text. Again, it gives you that flexibility, but also protects, the commission from people just willy-nilly withdrawing after the city has expended some money in the application. Should that be appropriate for the commission?
So essentially, this is supporting your first recommendation that we do just strike this first sentence.
That's all we're doing, is striking the first sentence.
Okay. Bailey, how do you feel about that?
I concur.
Okay, so the motion then, all right, so your motion is essentially, well, maybe we should say specifically, it's to strike the first sentence. Is that true?
I'll be very succinct in my motion as been in discussion, and that is specifically, my motion is to accept staff recommendations to strike the first sentence, period.
Everybody good with that? I know we had a motion, had a second. Is that
Second.
still comfortable? Okay. Further discussion? Okay, we have a roll call vote, please. We have a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Bissell, absent. Commissioner Coley? Yes. Commissioner Emerson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hobbs?
Yes.
Commissioner King, absent. Commissioner McCormill? Yes. Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, and the other articles, other items within the bylaws that we need to look at. Not, we'll move on to the next item. City Attorney's Office presentation. And we're not going to deal with the COIA this meeting. We'll do that at a later meeting, I think. And FOIA, you would like to?
Yes, our Assistant
Speak to
City
that.
Attorney, Sean Dolan, is going to brief the commission on the Freedom of Information Act. The agenda does talk also about COIA, which is a Conflict of Interest Act. We're not going to talk about that today, but if the commission has questions about COIA and how it pertains to commission and wants some additional information, we can follow up at a subsequent meeting.
So the Freedom of Information Act is designed so that public business that's being conducted, that documents that are records of public business are available to be inspected and viewed by the public. Also free entry to meetings. And there's a definition of meetings, but specifically meetings where public business is being discussed. And we'll move on in a couple of slides to talk about what does not constitute a meeting. So FOIA really, for this body, crucially, has mandates how meetings are conducted, also access to records that are in the custody of public officials. So the open meeting requirement is that all meetings of a public body be open. That means that the public can come in, observe, comment as appropriate. In a definition of a meeting, it can include what's called an informal assemblage of 3 or more members when those persons are present and discussing public business. Under some circumstances, meetings can be held electronically. So what is not considered a meeting? So if there are two or more members gathered where no part of the purpose of that gathering or attendance is the discussion or transaction of public business, it wasn't called, it wasn't prearranged with any purpose or discussing or transacting any business of the public forum. And then there are also public forums, candidate appearances, or debates where the purpose, and what you'll see, FOIA, just like so much of law in Virginia, has specific pieces that work its way in over time. And so something will happen, and then a legislator will say, oh, we need to take care of that, especially if that person's a candidate, for example. And you see very specific language here that says, even if one of the members' performance is to be discussed, as long as public business. So it's a candidate forum. Let's think of there's an election, for example. There are more than one members there. They're not discussing public business, but that member's performance as, say, a board of supervisor, for example, is discussed. That's been carved out, so that doesn't constitute a meeting for the purposes of the Freedom of Information Act. So what I can say is, please be careful. So the use of emails in particular can constitute a meeting if it goes to everyone. So if you have an internal email, please don't hit reply all, because then that engagement of everybody that's in that conversation constitutes a meeting where there hasn't been notice and the public isn't available. And using texts, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, for example, or any technology that addresses two or more members at the same time that's discussing that public business constitutes a meeting for the purposes of FOIA. And there are penalties for not conducting a meeting in a way that's available to the public so the public knows what's going on. And that's the whole purpose of this, That's the whole purpose of this, is that the public business not be discussed behind closed doors, if you will. So responses to FOIA requests are handled by the city's FOIA officer, as opposed to you're needing to respond to those. And what that serves two very important purposes. One is to save you the time, but two is the city's FOIA's office keeps track of, there can be costs associated with it. There is some material that may be confidential. There are many exceptions for certain kind of material that can go out. So if you do receive a request, and it can be written or verbal, for public documents, please contact Meg as soon as you receive that, because the city is working on a 5 business days deadline. There are ways to extend it, but that really is conditional. It depends on the situation, whether that time limit can be extended. So if you do receive a request, please advise and share that with Meg as soon as possible. This first sentence, citizens of the Commonwealth make FOIA requests. In Virginia, the Freedom of Information Act specifically says that citizens of the Commonwealth may make requests. So if you have a citizen from another state, that does not apply. And so that has to be, they have to be available, those records, for copying. There is no requirement that the request be in writing, but if at all possible, we want to see if we can have that reduced to writing so that the people that are responding to it, the FOIA officer, the city's FOIA officer, knows exactly what's being requested. And it's not uncommon with FOIA requests for there to be something so general that the FOIA officer is not able to tell what's being requested, and then they can do a follow-up. And so if it's verbal, as we know, even going through one person and their filter, if you have, unless you have the two individuals, and sometimes those two individuals even come back and say, what did you mean by that? What were we trying to accomplish here? So that if at all possible, we'd like to see that request reduced to writing. So this is really important. Agendas, agenda packets, and any supporting material documents that are given to the commission have to be made available to the public at the same time. So if there is any material that's being generated, any documents that relate to the public business that's being generated and distributed to this group, at the same time, that has to be made available to the public. So that's really a practical, technical issue that Ms. Pittenger may be able to provide more information about that, how that happens and when it happens. But that's very critical. And so our next slide is the ubiquitous questions one that I like to put. It's not really everywhere, it's just at the end of my presentations. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Sir, I just have a question, and that as it pertains to slide 4, 5, and 6. And excuse me, I'm not respectfully trying to be petty, but just trying to clear up any ambiguity. In slide 4, it says 3. Slide 5, it says 2. Slide 6, it says 2. So respectfully, what should we go off quantitatively as being the metric that constitutes a meeting? Because again, slide 4 says 3.
2 or more.
Okay, so we should
more,
go with,
more than 2. So 3, 2 or more.
okay. Thank you.
Could you explain again the 5-day deadline? Does that mean like 5 days from the time of the event to the time that's reported to Meg, or is it time to?
It is from the time of receipt. 5 business days. So if you receive something today, 5 business days after that, the response is due.
This is a receipt of something that would need to be public. Is that? Yeah. What exactly is the receipt? What is it that we're receiving that we're talking about?
So, and thank you for following up. So what I'm talking about is if you receive a request for public documents.
Okay, so it's a
Right,
turnaround time for
right.
response. I
Now,
got you.
documents that you receive, that this board receives, it's at the same time. So when it's published, the agenda and the supporting packet's published to you, it needs to be published to the public. If documentation, this board receives documentation in support of or relating to a particular certificate of appropriateness, these rules require that it be published at the same time. So literally, if you receive something from staff as part of that public business internally, it's got to go out to the public. That wouldn't apply to submissions that people are making themselves during the process, because people give things out all the time as applicants. But it's what the staff is considering that, I mean, the commission is considering that the staff has received or it's generated in some other way.
It's like basically a 5-day response time from the request.
For a request, yes,
Yeah,
sir,
okay,
yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay. Other questions? Comments?
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, staff reports. We have COA administrative approvals.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We did have a number of administrative approvals since your last meeting, and that information is included in your packet. I'll touch on those briefly. 116 Franklin Street is a residential structure, a duplex, where the applicant sought to replace the windows on that structure and met our new standards, and that was issued. 514 West Washington Street, very similar, single-family contributing residential structure where replacement windows were approved, as well as 120 North Main Street, a commercial structure with a similar request, replacing windows with comparable materials and virtually identical from the public right-of-way, which is something we talked about quite a bit in our revision of the code and the standards. 219 Clay Street might be a familiar address. This property is under some enforcement action for property maintenance violations. This is the removal of a chimney and the placement of a tarp to secure the building. This is a building that's in a very, very dilapidated condition. This essentially makes it safe to continue to work on and make the necessary improvements to that building. 342 North Main Street, also a building that was under some property maintenance enforcement action. This is a repainting of the structure with matching colors and materials. 526 West Washington Street, chimney repair. This is also single-family residential structure, and the contractor is able to match the existing materials. 223 Pearl Street, a number of exterior repairs and painting to this single-family residential structure, again, the owner or contractor was able to match those materials, so they qualified for these administrative approvals. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my report. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Thank you.
All right.
Okay, we have a property maintenance update.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Susan Dillard, Property Maintenance Official, and I have the code enforcement update. 342 North Main Street property has a few property maintenance violations, and we have been working with the owner, trying to get him to repair the structure. We're going to issue a summons for April court hearing, but we've talked to him since then, and hopefully he'll get his application in, COA in, so that he can start work on that structure. 223 Bank Street property, major property maintenance violations. This property was listed for sale by the bank on December the 6th, and since then the listing has been removed. Whether it's sold or not, I'm not sure. We've been monitoring the clerk's office to see if any ownership has changed. As soon as we find out, we'll let you know. 219 Clay Street, the owner was issued a building permit to remove some chimneys on that property that were in danger of falling. He has since removed one, but now he's in the process of shoring up the interior floors and walls so that he's trying to stabilize the structure so that they can finally repair the roof on that structure. 112 West Washington Street, that property is still vacant, and there has been no repairs to that structure. 374 East Washington Street, property still in disrepair. We did meet with the owner in December, and since December, he has submitted another structural engineer's report, and we've also received some plans for the repair of that structure. 221 Bank Street, property maintenance violations. This owner is in court on March the 7th for property maintenance violations. 301 and through 307 Bank Street, several property maintenance violations. The owner is in the process of evicting his tenants there. He's going to do a full renovation of that structure. 212 Pearl Street, a few property maintenance violation. We haven't been in contact with that owner of the property, so we have requested a title search. 318 Bank Street, property maintenance violations. Summons was issued for this past December, and the owner prepaid all the fines. So we're going to be resubmitting a summons to that owner in March. 222 Bank Street, there are several property maintenance violations. There was a November court hearing, and the judge fined the owner $700 for failure to repair the structure, and a new summons has been issued for April. 210 Bank Street, one property maintenance violation, and a summons has been issued for March the 7th. 320 Hill Street, again, property maintenance violation, summons issued for March hearing. 110 Oakdale, we have been in touch with the owner of that property, and he appeared in court last week, and judge continued his property maintenance case to March the 7th. 212 Grace Street, there are several property maintenance violations, and the inspector granted an extension as long as the owner continues to repair that structure. 209 Pearl Street, repairs are still in progress. And 112 Franklin Street, property maintenance violations, and this owner is in court. His court case was continued to March the 7th. And I'll take any questions that you may have.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Morning, Ms. Stiller. I do have a question or two if I'm in line to be able to ask, and if you're able to provide an answer. Bank Street alone, I guess, is the most notorious on this report. It has 7 homes listed. So former Commissioner Draper had mentioned this some time ago. And that question one would be, are there any subsidies that are being worked on with the fines that are being collected to help to offset some of these maintenance and repairs?
Not that I know of, sir.
Okay.
I don't know my house numbers and all, but also looking at Bank Street, the house is right down on the end of a bank, on the corner of Bank and Penner Street.
That's 223 Bank Street.
That's what I thought, okay. There are rumors going around that that's slated to be destroyed. Is that any truth to that, or do y'all know anything about that?
It has been condemned. I have condemned that property because of the severe foundation and structural issues. But we have, I've condemned it. We have not moved forward with the demolition process as of yet.
Other thoughts, comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you for the detailed report with all the code violation detail and the status. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have zoning updates. Thank you, sir.
Chair, good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Alexander, zoning inspector. First address I have was 400 Washington Street, was cited for painting the building without a COA. They have since come into compliance and received a COA. The second address I have is 215 Market Street. They installed a fence without a COA. Met with the property owner or the occupants, and they have been working to come into compliance. But they haven't received a COA yet, or their zoning permit. 530 Washington Street, working without a COA. Installed a sign, replaced the old sign. They have since come into compliance and received the COA. 193 East Washington Street, working without a COA. That was an internal meeting myself and Ms. Pettinger had with the owner. He's actually working on coming into compliance. He replaced windows, and so he's working on coming to compliance. The last order of business is also 222 Bank Street. They received a judgment 2/1/24 of $500 for not obtaining their COA, and that was so we will be issuing another summons for April for a subsequent 500. Any questions for me?
Thank you, sir.
No,
Thank
sir?
you.
Oh, all right.
Okay, are there any announcements? Mr. Kennedy, do you have anything? Okay. All right. If not, then that completes our agenda. Then we'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.